What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the RPS Swing for the Fences show. We're talking some MLB DFS. Finally, we get it back. I mean, we had it yesterday, but this is the real opening day for DFS, anyways. We get an 11-game slate, big slate to talk about. And I brought the big guns on for the show. All right, first up, my man Tony, Big T. What's up, brother? Good to have you on the show. We're going to talk some baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. We've been talking about NASCAR and MMA and whatever else we've talked about, LOL, for the last 3-4 months. And we get to talk about some real sports. And I forgot how much I like baseball because we're looking at lineups and all day we're working on – JT's working on the playbook and we're doing the core plays and everything. And you just hear everyone talking about how easy Boston's going to be facing Tommy Milone. And we'll get into the slate, but – I just love baseball. Like, you can get different so easily, get a low-owned stack, have a chance to win a ton of money on a site like FanDuel tonight where it's going to overlay. I mean, right now you're talking it's 31% full. It's $1 million for first. You can get a stack that's going to be under 5% owned in a million directions. What more could you want? I mean, it's exciting times here, and I can't wait to dive into it with you guys.
Yeah, and then, we got our other guy, JT Hayes, on. JT's doing the playbook for us over at Run Pure Sports. JT, what's going on, brother? Good to have you on the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's exciting looking at this 11-game slate, and same thing, just kind of finding a way that I'm like, I can play each of these teams almost and be happy about it. And there's some interesting spots. I mean, I get that Boston's going to be popular, but they just signed Tommy Milone. The Orioles did a couple of weeks ago. I don't see him throwing more than 3-4 innings max. And then you've got one of the worst bullpens behind that. So I think you get creative with the other side of your lineups. I think there's a lot of ways to get creative tonight. I think there's some interesting one-offs. So it's good to be looking at something other than although Korean baseball was very good to me, something other than just 5 games a night. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and before we dive into this, guys, just real quick, if you can hit that like button, helps us pump out some of this content for you guys, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. If you haven't gotten over to Run Pure Sports, get over there. We're running, promo code right now, 20% off. Join the movement is the promo code. Join the movement. So get over there, promo code, join the movement, and sign up. You get, the playbook, the core plays, the temps, all that stuff. Big T, me, JT Hayes, Titletown. I'm sure I'm forgetting guys. Cash Core, Mangone's Cash Cores. You got all that stuff on the site, so make sure you get over there, check us out. But I think it's time, boys. I think it's we're ready. We're ready to go. Let's talk some baseball. First thing we're going to talk is pitchers, and I want to start at the top. Big T, I'm going to bring it to you first. We've got Verlander, Bieber, Barrios, Giolito, Nola, Flaherty. These are like the top, 6 guys on Draftkings. We're starting like 9K and above. What are we doing here? What's the plan of attack? I know for a fact that I think there's 2 guys in this range that I really love. But what are you thinking here? Are you just like jamming in one guy? Who's your favorite?
Yeah, so early in the season, if we can get a strong lean on who's going to throw the most pitches, who's going to get pulled early, stuff like that I think is the biggest edge. Because, I mean, if you're just looking at projections and like salaries and point per dollar type thing, everyone's going to kind of look somewhat similar. So you need something to differentiate a little bit. I mean, at the top, like you can play Verlander and Bieber, 11-4, 10-3, but on a big slate like this, we saw a big edge last year with kind of going a little cheaper in that mid-range and getting similar value, especially early in the year where, I mean, these guys aren't going to go 120 pitches or something, which they could later in at least I don't think they will, man. Maybe JT has some more knowledge with that, but I'm assuming a lot of them are going to go between like 90 and 100 pitches range, similar to I mean, we got the 1 game rained out, but those guys were done last night anyways when they were getting ready. I mean, Cole, maybe we got 1 or 2 more, but I just don't think they go deep. So I don't want to pay 11-4. I'm not going to play Verlander. I'm not Bieber at 10-3. I could play if it fits. Like if I'm playing a cheaper stack and it lets me fit him. Like, I'm fine with him. I'm fine with Verlander too if they fit. But I just think there's a lot of big bats you can get on this slate. Barrios against a very tough – the White Sox lineup looks nice. I mean, they're deep. They're talented. I doubt I play him. Giolito, same thing. I can't imagine paying 9.5 for him. Nola, I think, will be pretty popular, 9.1. And Flaherty, 9K. But my favorite, I think, is Lance Lynn. And I don't think a lot of people will be on him. We got a new stadium in Texas. I think it's going to play as a pitcher's park. I mean, I heard they're closing the roof tonight. People are used to Texas and the heat, ball flying out. I don't think it's going to be like that. I know Colorado's got a ton of lefties, which does worry me. Lance Lynn's always been famous for being much better against righties, but he's going to go 110 pitches tonight, locked in. I don't really respect the Colorado offense much, even though it's a bunch of lefties. So I think him, and I mean, so it's weird because Frankie Montas right there at 8.8 too, and Herman Marquez 8.7. That's kind of my sweet spot where I like even Paddock at 8.6. I'm interested to hear what JT says because I like this range. It does have a little risk, like Frankie's going against the Angels who never strike out a ton, but I hear good things about him, and I just like this range. So I'm kind of in that range more than the top, but I want to hear what JT thinks.
Yeah, so Big T's just throwing out the first tier, which is what I was looking to talk about. Just moving on to the next tier, just doing whatever he wants.
Moving on to the important people.
Just throw the best pitchers, away. The top guys. JT, what are you doing here? Are you just throwing the best pitchers or the 6 top guys? Are you throwing them out and just going to that next tier? Because I do agree. I like more of the mid tier pitchers that Big T was starting to talk about. But what are you doing?
Yeah, I think, I have to say, a couple of guys in chat, one of the things I brought up about Verlander is this is his first league start. He had groin surgery in the spring, and someone's like, well, it's a leg, it's not his arm. And I'm like, whoa, have you ever pitched? I mean, the legs are the most important thing. But Verlander has been up around 80 pitches, and, they've been moving him along slowly. Dusty Baker historically has, had no regard for the health of his pitchers, but in this instance, with the matchup, with what I expect Houston's offense to do, I don't think they're really going to have a need to push him far in this game. So I'm off Verlander for the most part. I think you could play him in cash. I think he's safe enough. This is, a matchup that he's done well in. If I was going to go one of the two, I might go Bieber. I'll probably have a little Bieber just because the bottom of that Royals lineup is not good. Is not good. I mean, they've got maybe against lefties, some of these guys will be okay, but I just don't see it being a really difficult matchup for Bieber. He's stretched out a little. He was up to 95 pitches before his last outing where they said they pulled the reins back a little just to keep him fresh. I was all in on Lance Lynn until about a day ago. And same reasons that Tony mentioned. Good park. The park's going to be more of a pitcher's park. Colorado on the road, coming off of a month training in altitude. But, the more I looked into it, with 7-8 lefties projected in that lineup, it's not that I think that they're going to rip them apart. It's just, will the strikeout upside be there? And I think the strikeout upside is going to be a little bit better for a guy like Jack Flaherty. I think it's probably going to be there for a guy like Paddock. I like taking shots on Woodruff. I think Woodruff at 7.7. I think people are scared of the Cubs historically. The weather's not something to fear tonight in Chicago. I actually like him a little bit. Nola, it's a good matchup, but he threw, I think it was 67, 68 pitches against Washington over the weekend. And Girardi was saying that he'd like to get 6 innings and 80 pitches out of him. Is that going to give us what we want at 9K when I think Sandy Alcantara is not a bad pitcher in his own right? And that Phillies team, I'm not super high on him tonight. So I think I'll have some Nola, but really I think I'm going to live in that mid-range and maybe stretch out to Bieber if I want to take a chance on what he's going to do against Kansas City.
Yeah, so let me just hit on this real quick. So if I was to play Bieber, I think I'm going to play Bieber more on FanDuel, where he's 10-2. He's the 3rd highest priced pitcher, where Jack Flaherty is 10.5. He's higher than Bieber. Where on DK, you can, Bieber is the second highest priced pitcher at 10.3, and Jack Flaherty's all the way at 9K. So if I'm going to play Flaherty, I'm going to play Flaherty on DK at 9K, and I'm going to play Bieber on FanDuel at 10.2. That's how I look at it from those two. Outside of them two, though, I'm kind of just off the rest of the guys in this range. Yes, they are very good pitchers, but like you guys were saying, we don't really know what the pitch counts are going to be, or like really how far they're going to let them go. Is it going to allow them to get those big games where they can get a bunch of strikeouts and go far? Like you said with Aaron Nola, like Aaron Nola is a really good pitcher, but like if he's only getting 80 pitches, I mean, could he get 6 innings and 80 pitches? I mean, okay, he might against this lineup, but he could not too. So, I mean, that worries you a little bit, or it has to. So, Big T, you talked about Lance Lynn. You kind of touched on a few other guys in that mid-tier range, but break it down a little more for us. You know, we've got Heaney at 8K, we've got Bumgarner at 8.4, Paddock at 8.6, Marquez at 8.7, and Montas 8.8. Who else besides Lance Lynn are you looking at?
So just one more thing about Lance Lynn, just to kind of piggyback on what JT was saying, is I like to go with Vegas so much, the sports books, and he's got one of the highest K props on the slate. I mean, 6.5, the over's favored pretty good. And then you look at Flaherty, 5.5 is his K prop. So Flaherty, 1 full K less. And then you got guys in that same price range just aren't higher for the most part. I mean, I'm looking at a comparison like you got Bieber's only 6.5 with less juice. I don't know. Like, I just think he's definitely my favorite pitcher, Lance Lynn, just with the pitch count and the park I think is going to be good. But to go down, my second favorite pitcher honestly might be Marquez in the second game, or I mean in the same game as Lance Lynn, and kind of go – a lot of people don't like to do that where you're for sure not getting a win, obviously, from one of them. But I've had good success playing both pitchers in the same game and just kind of hope it's low scoring and it plays into a low scoring game like that. I like him. Frankie Montas, I think, is going to have a big year. So him in that same range too. I do worry about the Angels, though. I mean, they just don't – I'm trying to find a K prop for him. I don't see one at the moment. But the Angels just don't strike out that much. So maybe a little less upside there. But I still like him. And even like Chris Paddock at that 8.6 range, I just really like this price range. It works for the offense. You can fit a ton of bats in there. And then our boy below that, I know JT's going to talk a little bit about, Bumgarner. He might get shellacked a little bit in San Diego. This San Diego offense looks good this year. I don't love the park. I'm never super high about that park, but, man, he might serve some juice balls tonight. So what do we think about this range, JT?
Yeah, I think my favorite there is probably Paddock out of those guys in that range. I do think the Padres are gonna do a number on Bumgarner. Bumgarner has been good on the road for a while. This is a team that has a lot of talent. This is a team that hits left-handed pitchers very well. They've done that the last couple of years. I like Montas a lot in terms of his talent, in terms of what I think he's going to do this year. The only concern I have with him is Guerin's comments along the same lines of Girardi of, hey, these first couple of starts, we're looking to get 60 to 80 pitches. Again, can we trust that? I don't know, but it's enough where I think I'd look in another direction where I think the Diamondbacks have a little bit more K upside for Paddock. I do. The Padres are one of my favorite stacks of the night. I think because I think they might be a little bit more popular than I expect them to be. I know Titletown was talking about that they're gaining a lot of buzz. But I like them, and Andrew Heaney is a guy who, when I first looked at his price, I was like, hey, I'm interested in that. And then there's just some things going on out there where he was scratched from a start over the weekend with back stiffness. And Madden says it's nothing to worry about. He says, no, I'll be fine. And I don't know. That A's team is I'm going to have some shares of the A's tonight. I like them. I like them quite a bit. Their power and speed throughout that whole lineup. And I think the A's are a team that aren't going to get a lot of they're not going to get a lot of ownership tonight, I don't believe.
Yeah, no, I think Heaney will be kind of like one of those popular SP2s or close to it. And he's super cheap on FanDuel too. And I do think people are on the Angels like for the win and stuff. So I think that means that for FanDuel's sake, I think he's going to be a little more popular there too. And what is he there? Like he's in the, what is he, 6K? Yeah, he's 6,700 over on FanDuel. He's got strikeout upside. Like this guy does have good stuff. He just gets hit really hard, right? And you've got a lot of powerful righties in that A's lineup. So that will be interesting kind of going forward. Another guy who you guys didn't mention, who I kind of want to get your takes on, is Woodruff. Because I think Woodruff has upside, especially from a strikeout perspective. I don't know about, that's a tough game from like they're playing the Cubs, but on DK at what is 7,700, I think he's one of my favorite SP2 guys or cheaper guys that I'm going to look at. What about you guys, Tony?
Yeah, so obviously with this being the first week of games and stuff, I'm super nervous about Woodruff's pitch count. But again, that's not really on any data. That's literally just a gut feel that I know they have a good bullpen or like a bullpen they like to go to. I just don't see him going deep. But again, that's just a gut feel, so I could be wrong. I do love the matchup. Like if you guaranteed me he was going to get even in the 90s pitch-wise, I really like the matchup, and I'm not scared of this Cubs lineup. It looks like there's some strikeouts in there too. I'm worried about the pitch count. I do like it though. So if someone had a strong take that he's going to go somewhat deep, I would go with him. But man, it seems tough for me to see that happening. And just to talk about Haney real quick, I think he is one of the best point per dollar pitchers on the slate. But I hate that. I hate these soft throwers that just they never get me excited. Just they never really get hit hard, but they never strike too many guys out. I don't know. Like I think he's a good play, but I'm not overly excited about him.
I mean, Heaney does have good. I think he does have good strikeout stuff. The problem is that he does get hit hard at times. That's his issue.
He just throws those freaking wiffle balls in there, like.
I knew he was a guy that you wouldn't like, Tony. I
hate all the soft throwers. Like it's a little bit better version of Tommy Milone.
Well, from Woodruff's perspective, though, let's be honest. We're kind of afraid of pitch counts in general and players not going far. And Woodruff is 7,700. I mean, show me a guy with better strikeout upside at 77 or in that range. I mean, I think Woodruff's the guy in that range. I mean, you could say, yeah, Paddock or Marquez.
Yeah, but I mean, in baseball, there's so many cheap hitters that, like, if I can pay $1K more and get guaranteed pitches with Lance Lynn, I'm just going to play Lance Lynn.
You need two, though, on DK. You need two anyways.
But I'm not going to play a guy that I'm worried about pitches, though, if I can. I mean, there's a ton of dudes on this slate.
All right, JT, what about you? Do you like Woodruff or anyone else kind of in that range?
Yeah, I like Woodruff. I think he threw 4 or 5 innings in an intra-squad, and I think he's been up around 90. And I think 90, 95 is probably the max you see out of anyone. And to your point, 7,700 for a guy that has the ability to strike out. I do think this is going to be somewhat, only 60 games, so breakout season, whatever. But he's a guy that has a lot of talent that I think he started to put it all together at the end of last year. I like Woodruff a lot as an SP2. And I'll have, Sandy Alcantara is another guy who, you look at the matchup and you say, well, there's, Phillies, it's in Philadelphia. But, one, he's handled the Phillies pretty well. He handled the Yankees over the weekend, his last tune-up before this opening night. At 6'8", I'm willing to take some shots with Sandy, especially where I want to get maybe a Bieber or I want to get an expensive stack like Houston or like Tony's favorite team, the Red Sox.
All right. I mean, so guys, is there anyone else we didn't touch on, after Woodruff and, Sandy Alcantara? I mean, a bunch of these guys, I mean, we got like Eovaldi going for the Red Sox. The Red Sox are going to be a popular stack from the hitters. Kyle Hendricks for the Cubs. Joe Musgrove at 6,900, Danny Duffy at 6,400. Is there anyone else that you guys are even looking at in 150, Tony? Is there anyone?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll probably have 150 teams. Oh, definitely on FanDuel, I'm playing 150 because of that overlay tournament. So I don't know if I will yet on DK, but if it looks like it's going to overlay, I probably will there too. But I like the Alcantara call a ton. Like Philly is a dangerous offense, but they also can strike out at times too, especially early in the year. I like that call a ton at 6,800. I'm definitely going to have a decent amount of him in my player pool. And I'm definitely playing Tommy Malone in my 150. Like he's 4K. If he gets me double digits against the chalk Red Sox, like if he gets me 12 points for 4K and some slows the Red Sox down even a little bit, like I'm not saying he's going to go 7 innings and strike out 10 dudes, but if he goes 4 or 5 innings and gets me 12 points and they don't slap him around, again, you got to do some different stuff in tournaments. And by doing that, I'll leverage all the Red Sox stacks. And it'll let me go up to maybe a Dodgers stack or one of these other expensive stacks where if it falls your way, you could have some massive leverage on the field. He's 4K, so I don't think there's a ton of risk to him. Sure, if he gets slapped around, your teams are probably dead because the chalk gets there too. But I think it's pretty good leverage at 4K.
Yeah. JT, do you agree with anything or disagree with anything that Tony said? And then anyone else he didn't mention?
No, the Malone play for me, the thing is that they just signed him a couple of weeks ago. And I have no idea what kind of shape he's in. I have no idea, we're worried about pitch counts with other guys. I just don't know what he's going to do. And if it were the middle of a regular season, they called him up from the minors and he was 4K, I'd be like, all right, yeah, I'll take a flyer on him. I just think that I'm gonna stay away from him because I like some of these other guys. Like I'd rather go Sandy and Woodruff and pair them with a Flaherty, or even if you're going to play Lance Lynn, pair them with a Lance Lynn, and so that's kind of where I see time going.
All right, and no one else, down here besides Sandy Alcantara. Is there anyone else that we didn't hit on that you liked?
I don't see anything else down there.
All right, cool. All right, so let's get to the hitters. Let's get to the batters. We're going to start at catcher and kind of work our way, down. So at catcher, guys, JT, I'm going to start with you here. What are we doing at catcher? Is there one catcher that you see above all else, or is it kind of more of just like a catcher in your stack type for you?
For me, it's kind of going to be a catcher in my stack. There's a couple. Obviously, you could take Grandal's been hitting the ball well. Grandal is in a matchup where Berrios has struggled historically against left-handed power hitters, so I could see him. I like Narvaez a little bit. Francisco Mejia is probably not going to be catching, but he might be DHing tonight against Bumgarner. I like Mejia a little bit. That's kind of, I'm not really on the Phillies. I'm not really on Real Muto. I mean, I like Sandy a little bit more than I like the Phillies tonight. Obviously, if Sandy goes 5 innings, they get into that bullpen, anything can happen because Marlins bullpen is still not very good. But I think there's other spots that I'm going to use that salary than going to even a one-off as Real Muto. That's kind of where I see catcher right now.
All right, Tony, any pushback or difference on what JT said, or are you kind of in line with him?
Yeah, I mean, so catcher, just how I build baseball, like it's all going to come down to the construction. I mean, usually I'm just always going to play whoever kind of fits with my stack, or if I'm playing up, I'll just punt. Like we got this 2K guy from the Giants who I assume is going to be in the lineup, and Rob Brantley or what. I have no idea who he is, but as long as he's in the lineup and he's min price, like I'll take my chances with him at 2K. And the matchup's decent. I mean, again, lefty righty against Stripling, which I don't worry about. And then you might have Hedges at 2,200 against Bumgarner, which is my preferred route. Like as long as he's in the lineup. Again, with baseball, you always got to confirm. We just should mention that. I mean, always check the lineup, make sure your guy's in there. There's always some a couple random guys too that'll pop in a lineup that you're like, oh, that's pretty cheap, that it sticks out. So until we see all the lineups, I mean, you don't need to make all your final decisions. But for me, I don't see anything at the top unless I'm stacking a team. Like if I'm stacking Philadelphia, which I'm probably not going to do. Like I'd have play Real Muto or whatever. But for the most part at catcher, I'm just going to kind of fill in with whoever's my stack. If I had to pick two, it would be the two cheap guys, Brantley or Hedges, and just save salary, spend up in other spots. That's my plan for the night.
Yeah, Hedges was a guy I was looking at, and then Brantley, if he's in at 2K, I'm definitely gonna have to check him out too. I like that. So let's move over to first base. JT, bringing it back to you for first base. What are we doing here? Is this a spot where we want to spend up, or are we trying to find someone a little cheaper? Where are we going?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of spots. I think you could look at the Indians. You could look at Santana. I like the Indians a bit tonight against Duffy. Obviously, you've got Michael Chavis, who's eligible. You've got Yuli Gurriel on Houston, and it looks like Houston's ownership is going to be a little bit low. And they've just, I mean, I don't look at BVP a lot, but when a pitcher consistently gets destroyed against a team, I mean, they have just beaten Marco Gonzalez in Houston. They've just shellacked him every single time. I like Yuli Gurriel a little bit. Another guy that I don't think a lot of people are going to play is Matt Olson. And Matt Olson is one of the better left-handed batters. I like the A's. Again, there's enough uncertainty with Heaney in that situation to have me interested in the A's, and I wouldn't shy away from Matt Olson either.
All right, Tony, where are you looking?
Yeah, I love. That's why JT wins all the money in baseball, because he's got these. I love strategies like that, like lefty Olson. He's kind of low down. He's going to be low owned. He's like a perfect, like, I mean, you can use him in your A stack, of course, but he's a good one-off too. Like literally no one. Say you were stacking Boston, like I don't think I'm going to, but you play Olson in a Boston stack, you're immediately different just by doing that. All of a sudden he hits 2 bombs tonight at 3% owned or whatever he's going to be owned. And you just have a massive leg up on that's all it takes to ship a tournament too, is that random one-off that goes deep twice. Lefty, no one plays that because on paper it doesn't make a ton of sense. But then like JT says, he hits lefties decent. Haney's a soft throwing lefty. I like that call a lot. And I think everyone wanted this Chavis to be hitting 5th or 6th. He's hitting 7th, which I'm interested in that, because one of the things I love in baseball, and I've had a ton of success in the past, is playing these bottom of the lineup guys on chalk stacks where everyone wants to play the 1 to 5, maybe a 6-hole hitter. I don't mind, especially now with the DH in both leagues. 7, 8, 9 becomes way more viable to me on stacks like Boston. He's only 3K on Draftkings, which is significant savings. If I am playing Boston, I think I have to have him in there at 3K, but I do want to see his ownership. Like, what are we projecting him to be owned? I mean, he's got to be still in the 30s, I would say. Definitely in the 30s just because of price, and everyone that uses an optimizer these days, it'll just end up plugging him in there. But either way, I think he's a really good play in the 7-hole. Looking down, I mean, so this is a good – JT's the baseball guy. I'm decent with stacking and stuff, but I don't know all the who's this Evan White dude hitting in the 2-hole for Seattle?
Seattle's got to see. This is why it's kind of crappy that Verlander's at his price in the first game of the season, where we don't know how many pitches he's going to throw, because they've got a couple of guys in this Seattle lineup that I'm like, yeah, Shed Long. I mean, really?
I remember him last year.
I'm sorry. He's a major leaguer. I get it, but he's not a guy that I'm going to roster a lot. And then you've got Jose Marmolejos. Not sure who he is, So they've got some guys that I'm like, all right, this really is kind of a weak lineup. I'm not sure about Evan White. So
the chat's saying he's a top prospect. I mean, I figured he's got to be somewhat of a hitting up the 2. Yeah. I mean, again, that's just another play where he's going to be 2% owned and he's hitting in the 2-hole against Verlander. Maybe he's your last guy in with the Boston stack type thing. And I don't know, Muncy. I think if I had to pick one guy at the top, it would be Muncy, I think, against the Shark. He's 4,500 on DraftKings. I think he's like 39 on FanDuel. I like him both sites. again, the Dodgers might sneak a little under the radar tonight, like maybe in the 10 to 15% range, just because they're later on in the evening. Everybody likes to get off to that quick start with Boston guys and these early guys so they can see what's the dude on FanDuel, JSU, that Dexter 777, just jam all the early guys and see the screenshot. I mean, people love that crap.
I love it. I can't stand it too. It's my biggest pet peeve. I swear to God, Tony just hit a nerve right there.
Yeah. And you just like, because it's Verlander, I think people will stay away from them, and you can certainly look for a one-off in that lineup. You can look at a Seeger. You could look at a Vogelback. Verlander's thing is, same thing as you'll see Scherzer do, right? He might strike out 8, 9, 10 guys, but he'll give up a couple of pops. So not a bad strategy.
I love it.
Vogelback's another nice call. I mean,
I was just going to say, I was just going to say Daniel Vogelbach at 3,500 on DraftKings. I will definitely have a couple one-offs of Daniel Vogelbach on DK. That is just, like JT said, Verlander's going to strike a bunch of dudes out. I'm definitely not doubting that. But he'll give up one or two, and it could definitely beat a Vogelbach. If I had to pick one person, I think it'd be Vogelbach that I definitely put my chips in on to go off Verlander. But, I like it. I think Yuli would be the guy I'd go with at the top. I think a lot of people are going to play Max. Carlos Santana, some of those guys. And I know people are going to play Chavis, like Tony said. Even though he's hitting in this 7-hole, I still think people are going to play him just because Boston is going to be so popular. I think if you want a cheap guy, Chris Davis going on the other side of Boston, when teams like Boston are super popular and you get the other side where you can get like a cheap guy on the other side. I mean, Chris Davis at 3,100 against Eovaldi, I'll take my chances with the $3,100 Chris Davis against Eovaldi.
Everything I've read, he might have found his steroid pump or something, because he's been looking good so far from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's hopefully what we're going for here. So
he got a legendary run last year. We should talk about him. Like, he was, what was it, like 0 for 49 or something in a row? Like, it's good to see him back a little bit.
We should not talk about that. I'm literally looking at him in a lineup right now. We should stop talking about what he was doing last year.
He does look better this year, though, in all seriousness.
There was a stretch, though, without an extra base hit for like 70 or 80 at-bats, something like that. It's hard to do in Major League Baseball, but
he's got $100 million deal too, right? Like a massive deal going 0 for 80 or whatever it was.
It was.
It's bad. But let's move on. Let's hope Chris Davis is returned to form, not what he was last year. Let's go to second base, guys. JT, I'm going to bring it to you. Now, I see my guy at the top, one of the top two guys anyways. Most of you who know me know that this guy in the background right here is like one of my baseball heroes. I don't know. So if you can see him, that's Kettle Marte. What are we doing here? Tell the people why you're playing Kettle Marte at the top, or not.
I like Kettle Marte a lot, actually. I just don't like him a lot tonight. I like Paddock a little bit more. But if you're going to go with the Diamondbacks, then absolutely you should include Marte. I think at the top here, you look at Altuve. I think Muncy's eligible at second. I didn't mention Muncy among the first basemen. I should have. That was I just forgot about it for a moment. But I do like the mid-range. I like Cesar Hernandez, who's on the Indians now. I think he's leading off tonight against Duffy. Edman or Colton Wong. It looks like Colton Wong's been leading off. Colton Wong's been a guy that I like as a player for a while. Hated that Matheny was playing him first, platooning him, and then batting him like 7th or 8th. But whoever gets that leadoff nod in St. Louis, I like them a little bit. I think the Padres. I guess Ty France you could go with. Keston Hiura. Keston Hiura is a talented kid, and Kyle Hendricks. I don't know that he gets lit up, but I think he's going to give up some runs, and I think you can pick off pieces of the Brewers. And Hiura is a place that I think makes a lot of sense at a position where outside of those 4 or 5 guys, I think it's a little bit weaker tonight.
Yeah. So Tony, JT just talked about a couple guys, but really just not a strong position in his mind overall. What do you think about the position? Who you like?
Yeah, second base is maybe the weakest position outside of catcher. I mean, it's really ugly. On DraftKings, I did bring up Muncy at first base, but he's probably more viable, honestly, at second base just because of how weak the position is. If you get a bomb from him, I mean, you're massive at second base. You look at the position, it's just super weak. I naturally look at I always like Colton Wong. I mean, Musgrove, I'm not a big Musgrove guy. Colton Wong in the one hole, 3,700. That sticks off the page to me as a good play. I mean, definitely a good cash play too. That in the one hole against a pitcher I don't love, super cheap at a weak position. It kind of checks all the boxes, a lot like Cesar Hernandez, like JT said. Both those guys, 3,800, 3,700, both in the one hole, both in pretty good matchups. Kind of checks the boxes for me alongside Muncy, and those would be my top three. I don't hate, again, kind of like catcher where I talked about the 2K guys. I don't hate playing Peraza. He's in the 9 hole. He kind of goes alongside of Chavis, like the 7. Who's hitting in the 8 for Boston tonight? Jackie Bradley. Yeah, I mean, and you got lefty, which doesn't even matter because they're going to be in the bullpen, like JT said. You could play 7, 8, 9, Chavis, Bradley, Peraza. Maybe you throw in 1 or 2 of the guys up top to get the full Boston. If I was stacking Boston, which, I mean, I'm playing 150, I'll play some Boston. It's going to be picking on the 7, 8, 9 a little bit. And Peraza at that cheap price, it lets you get Boston. If you play him with Chavis, you get a super cheap exposure to this Boston offense. And I'd much rather do that than just go in there and play 1 through 5. I mean, especially Kevin Pillar freaking hitting 5th. Like, he isn't any good. So I do like Peraza a decent amount, even though he's hitting 9th.
Peraza's actually got some power against lefties, too. He had a good run last year where he was hitting leadoff for Cincinnati, actually. That's a pretty good call on that team. I just think, I mean, if I'm going to stack Boston, the one guy that I'm going to make part of every one of them is JD. I just think JD, I mean, he's top 1, 2, or 3 in ISO against lefties. I mean, I don't think anyone doesn't know that, but if I'm stacking them, I'm including him. But I like that bottom of the order because then you could run that back with another team that, you know, you don't have to go super cheap in that second stack.
JD fits so good too because he's in that 2 hole. Obviously, I mean, you don't need to play Benintendi, but yeah, definitely play JD if you're stacking. I mean, you can even set up a rule. I mean, we'll do videos as we go as the optimizer gets on the website and stuff. But set a rule like if you're stacking Boston, make sure JD's in there. At least I will. Like, I won't have any Boston stacks without him because there's nothing worse than like when you get in there, get all excited about Boston. He hits 2 bombs and somehow you don't have him on your good Boston team. It's like, how do I not have JD on this team? So just set the rule. Make sure you got him on all your teams. And, I mean, you have to play him. He's just too good against lefties.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, one other thing, too, is if you don't want to play chalky Boston stack, you can just lock JD in as a one-off and then fade the stack entirely and just play him if you love him that much against lefties but don't want to play the chalk Boston guys. So, I mean, that's
I don't know if I like him as much as a one-off just because I think he's going to be very popular and we're considering him against the lefty. And granted, I don't know who Baltimore has coming out of the bullpen, but there's a chance that they're not going to bring a lefty in to face him. He may only get 1 or 2 at-bats against the lefty. So, he's a great play. I'm not saying JD's probably the best play on the board. I'm not saying he's not. I just don't know if I'd play him as a one-off unless it was just a super low-owned stack with him.
Yeah, I just mean if you like him that much and you want to play him, that's another route to go. But, yeah, so let's move on. Third base, JT, what are we looking at here? You know, we've got obviously the chalk Boston, Devers at the top, you know, Bregman. I'm kind of looking at these Houston guys. You're saying they're going to be low-owned. I mean, I like Bregman a lot if we're talking about, like, someone at the top. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Bregman is another guy who just annihilates lefties, and I like him quite a bit. I like Jose Ramirez quite a bit. I like that Cleveland team against Duffy. I just don't have a lot of respect for Duffy when he takes on teams with this kind of power. So I think here I'll probably stay at the top. I like Chapman a bit. Manny Machado in that Padres stack. I like Manny's cheap too. I think Manny's 4,000 on DraftKings. So, it's kind of those guys are the pool for me. You go back to Justin Turner with the Dodgers. I think that's the top end. I'll probably have quite a bit of Chapman. Chapman's a guy that I like quite a bit tonight, and I think I'll have a lot of Bregman and Jose. So I'm paying up at third base pretty much.
Yeah, and the chat just said Austin Hedges is not in the lineup tonight. It's Francisco Mejia for the Padres. So no Hedges tonight. Tony, what are you looking at third base?
Yeah, so just to circle super quick back to catcher, like that just makes that San Francisco guy – he is San Francisco, right? Yeah, San Francisco guy, the Rob Brantley, if he's in the lineup at 2K, he's like definitely the best catcher play for me if I want to punt. Sure, if you have salary at the end of your team, go up and get something better, but 2K is significantly cheaper than anyone else at a bad position, so I definitely like him. But circle back to third base. I love the Machado call. He's on our San Diego stack we keep talking about, and I don't hate Ty France in that same stack. Again, he's in the 7-hole. People won't play him just because if they play San Diego, they're going to play Machado, even though France is eligible at second base too. But I think he's a really good play, even as a pivot to Machado, just because no one's going to play him, and you get decent leverage on that stack. You got also Kyle Seeger, kind of what we talked about with Verlander. He could definitely give up a bomb to one of these lefties. Seeger is super cheap, 3,400. Have to like that. Jake Lamb, I mean, for a while he was super popular and a good player. I don't know what happened to him. He's hitting 8th now. I know we like Paddock. I like Paddock, but 2,800 feels cheap. Well, what happened to him, JT? Does he just suck now?
There was an injury issue last year, and I'm not sure what it was, but he fell off some kind of cliff. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, Diamondbacks going into Coors, and I think Jake Lamb was like 80% owned in tournaments. Yeah. And now he's just not the same player, or at least he just wasn't the same player last year. And he's not a guy who's going to be in my player pool tonight. Now, he was talented. He did have talent. I don't really know if the injury issues are what drove his production down, but tonight I just, I think France is an option definitely. I don't know if I'm going to go cheap at third. Third seems to me like there's some of these top guys that are just in such great spots that I kind of want to take advantage of that.
I'm going to give you guys a pivot right now. I know for a fact with Machado at 4K, and this guy's 2,400 on FanDuel, but Alzheimer's Diaz for Houston, he's hitting in the 8-hole, but he does real well against lefties. Does have power, and he's 2,400 on FanDuel. He's 4K on DraftKings, so a little difference in pricing there. Definitely a better play on FanDuel. But again, I think Machado is going to be super popular, and we do like him. I do like Machado a lot, but not many people, when they see Chapman, Machado, are going to click on Diaz at 4K on DraftKings. And my Houston stack is definitely going to have Diaz on DraftKings just for that leverage, because I know for a fact I don't think people are going to play him. So I think he's a sneaky guy who I like tonight. I'm definitely going to have some of.
I got another dude for sure that's sticking out. That this St. Louis team against Musgrove, you got Carpenter at 3,600 on DraftKings. He was pretty bad last year, but at times he's been really good at times. And it's a fresh year, fresh start, all the time off. Musgrove I don't love. 3,600 so cheap. I'm kind of liking this St. Louis, these prices. I wasn't, before we started the show even, I wasn't overly interested in the St. Louis stack. But you just look at these prices. I mean, Goldie's only 42. DeJong's only 39. Yachty's pretty cheap for a catcher. I mean, basically the whole team. I mean, Tyler O'Neill has some pop in his bat. Even Bader has some. St. Louis is definitely going to be one of my stacks looking at this, because really the only guy I think that's overpriced even at all is Tommy Edman, and he's good enough to be priced up there anyway. So whenever I can consider all 9 guys on – actually, I don't think I'd play Dexter Fowler in the 7-hole, but everyone else looks good there. And I have to, at third base too, I have to talk about my boy Juan Moncada. Like, he's always one of my favorite one-off plays just because he's hardly ever owned in spots like this, especially against Barrios, righty. A righty on the hill. I love Moncada going against righties. I don't like him as much from the right side of the plate. It's kind of well known anyways by now that he's much better lefty, but against a guy like Barrios, he's not going to be owned tonight, and he has as much upside as anyone on the entire slate. So those are the type of guys I like to one-off with.
Yeah, and Tony, Steve Anthony, off subject, is giving you credit for a great call on Ricky Werenski, but then he comes back with Carp is washed. So right after he gives you a
can't give me
good call,
credit in golf anyways, because my two locks of the week were Werenski, who I think was really good, but man, Casey, I thought Casey was a lock too, and Casey just, Casey might be on my list. I don't know if I can come back with him anytime soon.
Yeah, it will be interesting this golf week, and it seems like there's going to be a very low 6-6 rate again this weekend, so that'll be interesting. But guys, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps us out, helps us push out more of this free content for you guys. So make sure you hit that thumbs up.
Yeah, we got 158, 160 watching. We only got 20 likes. We always talk about this on the golf show. Hit that like button for us. It helps us a ton. 160 and only 20, that's a bad percentage. We need some likes.
Yeah, for sure. The RPS swag just came out. I
got the boxes right here. I can't tilt the camera, but yeah, we got the.
He hasn't even sent me anything yet. But
no one else has one. Actually, Uncle T.
He's wearing the T-shirts. He hasn't even sent anyone anything yet.
Wear each one of them before he sends it out.
We got hats. You can't see it because of the thing. We got it all going on here.
Yeah, Tony's got everything going on. He's got the shirts, the hats, and JSU, JT, everyone who no one has anything. It's just Tony.
Uncle T does because he met me for lunch the other day. So he's the only other one.
Uncle T has the in. That's it. Uncle T. The sharpest knee house in the group. That's all I'm going to say. Uncle T. So let's move on, guys. Shortstop, I'm pretty sure. Let's get into it right now. JT, Story, Lindor, Bogarts, because Boston Stack's going to be very popular. And then Tatis, Correa, these guys at the top. What are we looking at the top? And then there any cheapies that you like?
Yeah, I think Tatis and Semien on Oakland in that mid-range. DeYoung is a guy who's 3,900 on St. Louis. St. Louis, you were talking about, extremely cheap on FanDuel, pretty cheap on Draftkings. And I think, Musgrove's issues with both lefties, and then he hasn't been the same pitcher on the road. So St. Louis is another stack that you could put in there, and you can mix them with your more expensive stacks. And then, at the top, obviously, Lindor is going to be a guy that I play with the Cleveland stacks. Bogarts, I think, is in a good spot. Corey Seager. If I had a favorite out of these guys, though, I'd say it's between Tatis and Semien.
Yeah, I like that. I like Tatis. Tony, what about you? What are you thinking at the top, and then any cheap guys?
Man, shortstop is pretty loaded, actually. I like a ton of guys at shortstop. You got all the guys JT kind of talked about. Obviously, you're going to like Lindor. Cleveland is probably my favorite stack of the night, so you have to like Lindor. Bogart, if you're stacking Boston, you're going to like Xander. It's just – so the two guys at the top are on maybe the two best stacks. So to get a little different, there's a lot of dudes you can get different with at shortstop. You got VR hitting in the one hole for Miami against Nola. Like, literally no one's going to play him, which is always a good thing in baseball. You got Elvis Andrus. No one's going to play him. I don't like him that much now that I actually look into it a little more. But you got Timmy Anderson in the one hole, who I like more against lefties. But, again, he's in the one hole unowned. Tatis, I think, is my favorite play. It's tough for me because I like Cleveland and I like San Diego. And, obviously, maybe the two best plays on both teams are the shortstop, so it makes it a little hairy. But one of the things, again, I like to do in baseball is, say I have a Cleveland stack and I leave Lindor out and put a guy like Tatis in, you get really different without really giving up anything. Like somehow if you hit gold where Cleveland goes off and somehow your guy goes 0 for 5 and then you got Tatis in that same spot for basically the same price and somehow he goes off, like you just hit the nuts, like just right there. It's tough to do because you're not going to build a Cleveland stack without Lindor, but it's a perfect pivot. I mean, just if you can fit Lindor, you're just going to do it, but pivot to Tatis or even pivot to Alexander. I mean, it sounds obvious, but most people that stack Cleveland are going to play Lindor. So try to find a pivot. You got plenty of dudes too, like Marcus Semien. If you like Oakland stack, I'm assuming he's going to hit up top, probably in the one hole against a lefty. There's a lot of guys. I mean, even like Kevin Newman, he's 3,400 on DraftKings, going against Flaherty, not the best spot, but the price is good up top in the lineup. These are the things I look for when I'm playing a one-off low owned. So shortstop's loaded. I mean, I don't even hate. I played him last night. No one's going to like him. But Crawford, I mean, for San Francisco, he got pinch hit late, which was a little concerning. But again, like in tournaments, when you're trying to hit this millie on FanDuel tonight, where the big overlay, don't be afraid to play some random one-off that's super cheap that makes the rest of your team work. Like maybe I play Brandon Crawford tonight on FanDuel as my only one-off. I play 4 Boston. I play 3 Cleveland with them. I play a good pitcher. I can have the perfect team except one spot. Don't be afraid to just punt it with a guy like Brandon Crawford. If he goes off, maybe that's what wins you the tournament and gets you unique. I'm not scared to play anyone in baseball.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. It's Tatis, it's Lindor. I'm going to throw Correa in that mix if you're stacking Houston. I think he's solid option there too. And then, yeah, Brandon Crawford. I'll definitely if I'm punting at shortstop, I definitely look to go back to him. But let's get into the outfield guys. Ton of guys as normal for us to kind of sort through. So, I mean, let's try and just give like 1 or 2 guys that are your favorite in each range. JT, I'll start with you at the top. Yelich, Trout, Springer, Blackmon, Bellinger, Betts, Harper. It seems like in baseball, we normally get like the Yelich Trout conversation. At least it was like last year. It seemed like everyone was asking every slate, Yelich or Trout, Yelich or Trout. What are you doing with these guys? And are you one to like fade one for the other, or how do you kind of do that? Because they are extremely, high priced.
Yeah, I think, last year I played quite a bit of Yelich and it worked out when I did. Trout is a guy that I almost never play. And it seems odd to say, but he's always between 5.7 and 6K. And if he gets you 25 points, great. But there's probably a 3.5 guy or a 3.9 guy that's going to get you 20 to 23 and not hurt the rest of your lineup as much as he does. So if I'm doing an Angel stack, yeah, obviously he'll be part of it. I just don't go out of my way for those guys. And Trout's a guy that really is sort of splits neutral. So it's not like with a JD or a Springer, you're like, oh, it's a bad lefty. I really have to get him in the lineup. Trout's a guy who'll, get you 15, 16 points every night or 5 nights a week. And that's not really what you're looking for at that salary. And then he'll have his big nights where he goes off for 40. But I think for me, I'm going to look more at Yelich against, bad right-handed pitching. He's in play tonight, obviously, but I think for me at the top, I'd go more with JD and Springer. I would prioritize having them in above him. And then as you get lower, guys like Franmil Reyes, the middle of that Cleveland order, Tommy Pham, Will Myers didn't do a whole lot last year, but I'll probably have some Will Myers tonight. He looks healthy. He looks slim. We'll see if he could do something. There's obviously there's a ton of outfielders that you could go with, but if I'm looking at one-offs, it's probably going to be coming from one of those teams that I want to stack.
Yeah, Tony, do you have anything to add about like how do you do the Trout Yelich thing? Is there one guy you prioritize over the other, and then like who are your favorite guys in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, baseball is just so much stacking to me that I don't necessarily look to play either one of those guys, Yelich or Trout. But, I mean, if it happens organically, like I always like to use this example, but you got your perfect team. Maybe you play a little cheaper stack like St. Louis or something, and you get to the end of your team and you got enough to fit anyone in there you want in that last spot. Obviously, I'm good with playing Trout or Yelich. And, I mean, tonight, I think I would just play Yelich. I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with Trout just because of all the talk about him, maybe not wanting to play, maybe this, maybe that. I don't know what kind of – I'm sure – I mean, he's maybe the best player ever, so I'm sure he's in good form. But I don't want to pay that price not necessarily feeling great about it. I want to feel good about him. I'd probably rather just play Bellinger or something than both of them. I mean, a spot like that. I mean, he almost hit a bomb last night, looked pretty good at the plate. I'd probably just go there. But, again, like everything I do is going to be based on who I'm stacking. Cleveland's one of my favorite stacks, and the issue is maybe my three favorite guys are the 5, 6, 7, all lefty mashers, but they all play the outfield. So I definitely want to play two of those three guys, Franmil, Luplow, Domingo Santana. I think you can get a little different even playing all three. Like I have them in my core right now over on the playbook. I have all three of those guys because I don't think a lot of people, especially with them being 5, 6, 7 in the lineup, I don't think anyone's going to play them together. And they're all lefty mashers. I mean, they could easily get these guys up front, get on base. These guys knock them in. I absolutely love them tonight. It is tough, don't get me wrong, to play three in the same team. It limits you. On FanDuel, at least you got the utility spot to kind of find something else. But I like them a ton. And, I mean, there's a million good outfield plays. So whoever you're stacking, kind of build it around that and let it happen organically.
Yeah, you want to be unique, play those three guys and no one else from Cleveland. That'll make you definitely unique.
Now that would really be unique.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like that.
You
mentioned that, but on FanDuel, I think that's amazing. Like,
yeah.
Because you could have a one-off, even like say you were stacking Boston, like you got 4 Boston, you got your random one-off, and then you got your 3 outfielders from Cleveland. Like no one's going to play that, and you got all chalk, so it's a whole chalk team that'll be unique. Those are the teams I like to build in baseball.
Yeah, JT, as we go down, who are your favorite guys kind of towards that like mid-range?
Well, in the mid, I think all those guys that Tony mentioned are right in the mid-range. Tommy Pham, he's 4,400. Laureano for Oakland, 4,200. You talked a little bit about Baltimore. Baltimore's offense, I think, is a little bit underrated. Eovaldi was not very good last year. Santander's in the 2-hole at 4,200. He's not a bad play. So Myers is 3,400. Will Myers is 3,400. I like that. That's helpful in the Padres stack if you want to run it back and get a couple of Astros or get a couple of Red Sox in there. So those are kind of my mid-range plays.
Yeah, Joey Gallo is another guy I think maybe gets left out because he's going up against a good pitcher in Marquez, but he could definitely Marquez can give up a few runs, even though he is good stuff. He can give up some runs, and Gallo is definitely my favorite on the Texas side for sure, 4,400 on DraftKings. One guy we got to talk about as we get down to this cheaper tier, Jay Bruce is going to be very popular tonight, especially on FanDuel, I think. He's 2,100. What do you guys do? And I'm just going to bring it specifically to FanDuel real quick. What do you guys do when you got a guy 2,100? Guy's got good power, but it is baseball. I mean, this guy could, strike out, go 0 for 4, have a rough day at it. And he's going to be very popular tonight. Tony, what do you do like in your MME pool and your 150? What are you planning on doing with a guy like Jay Bruce?
Yeah, I think he's a very good play. And I think he's a good play even on DraftKings where he's in that 7-hole. He's not going to be owned on DraftKings. He'll for sure be owned on FanDuel because he's 2,100. He's got power. He's shown upside. Sure, I mean, he's not what he once was probably. I mean, he's not going to have a great year, I wouldn't think. But in this one spot alone, I mean, the Phillies are projected over 5 runs. We kind of like Alcantara, but that doesn't mean we can't like Matt the other way. I mean, I for sure wouldn't play him with Alcantara on a big slate, but if you're not playing Alcantara, like Bruce, I mean, 2,100, he's a perfect like one-off type play on FanDuel for me, where I play my stack, I maybe play another stack of 3, and then I got Bruce as a one-off to make it all work. Maybe I need a really cheap guy in a spot. I mean, he's a great play. There's no other way really to put it on FanDuel.
Is he a guy that you would consider lock buttoning at that cheap price on FanDuel?
I would never lock Jay Bruce, I don't think, just
okay.
because – I mean, sure, he's got upside, but, like, he's definitely got a chance to not get you anything, too. I mean, out of the 7 hole, maybe he only gets 3 at-bats. And we like Alcantara, too, so I definitely would never lock Jay Bruce, put it that way.
All right. JT, do you have anything different from what Tony said, or do you kind of agree with what he said?
Yeah, no, I agree with what he said. I mean, you know, especially if he's going to be highly owned, I'd rather take my shots that he's not going to do much, especially against a pitcher that I think has had some success and I think is a pretty good, talented pitcher and is at the right price tonight. That's the other thing with Alcantara is that price it's good for him. It's good for him in this matchup. And so where I have, and I'll probably have in my 150, 4 or 5 Phillies stacks, just because that Marlins bullpen is still going to be one of the bottom 5 in baseball. He'll be in there, but I'm not prioritizing him otherwise.
All right. So guys, let's move it on. We got to get to the stacks part. Tony, we'll start with you. I want you to give me your favorite overall stack of the day, that stack that you're going to, be the highest on, and then give me like 1 or 2, maybe lower owned stacks that people, in MME, they might kind of forget about and be lower owned.
So for sure, my favorite stack in the core piece of my stacks, like in my 150, is going to be Cleveland. But again, like I said, my Cleveland stacks aren't necessarily going to be built around 1 through 5. I'm for sure on all my stacks going to have 2 of those outfielders. And on my main team, I'm probably going to have all 3 outfielders. But like on my script, I'll set a rule to make sure I have 2 of those guys on all teams, which naturally gets me a little bit different. Definitely they're going to be my number 1 stack. I'm starting to like St. Louis more too, but they kind of fall in that second spot. Boston, if I'm playing Boston, I kind of talked about it, but it's going to be 7, 8, 9 with JD type thing. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not going to play Houston. I just don't like them much tonight, so I'm going to fade them, even though they've had good success against Marco. I'm just I don't really know how teams are going to handle. What is the deal with JT? What's the deal with my boy Jordan? He's just missing?
Who?
Jordan Alvarez. I heard he's literally like missing or something.
You said who to Jordan Alvarez? Come on.
Yeah, he caught me off guard when he said who.
No. Of course, and the way you pronounced it, though, I was like, "What are you talking about?" It sounded like Dordan. I was like, "I don't know anybody by that name." But he's away from the team, and I there's been so much drama in these sports. Today alone, I think another 6 guys left the NBA bubble. So yeah. I don't know what the hell that means for the bubble. Obviously, the bubble isn't isn't all that strong. If people can just say, "Hey, I'm out here,"
you can just ship it out whenever you want.
Yeah, and I don't know what they have to do when they get back. So there's been so much drama. I haven't, the one thing I just said, okay, he's away from the team. Who's going to be playing tonight? It's too bad, because he's another guy that, as a left-handed batter, just it doesn't matter. Lefties, righties, ambidextrous pitchers, he just hits them all. So it's sad that he's not there. But I think I like Houston a little more than you do maybe tonight. Again, Seattle's another bullpen that doesn't really impress me until I see something out of them, if they've changed. But so I like Houston a little bit more. I wish Jordan was there, but we'll have to make do with the other 4 or 5 All-Stars in that lineup.
Yeah. So you like Houston? Who are 2 other like lower owned stacks that you are high on?
Yeah, I'm high on Cleveland too. I'm going to have a lot of Padres. I'm going to have Oakland. I think Oakland's going to come in at maybe under 5% owned. And I'm going to have Oakland for 2 reasons. One, I like the talent on the team. I'm going to have him because I also think Heaney's going to be a little more popular than he should be. I think people are going to look at that 8K price and say, wow, this is a guy that was 10K last year. at some points, and he's got decent history against them. But, back stiffness, pitchers, Joe Madden, it's kind of like a perfect scenario for some wacky things to happen. And with the speed they have and the power they have, I just like their chances at that ownership tonight. St. Louis is probably the other one that I think will not see a ton of ownership. That they're just too inexpensive. I mean, they're almost free on FanDuel, and even on DK. I think the most expensive guy is in the mid fours or something. So it's just and Pittsburgh, another team with there was so much chaos in the front office. Their bullpen is again not good. You see a theme there. We like to target teams with weak bullpens. How many pitches is Musgrove going to throw? I don't. Again, same thing. So those are kind of my teams, and then one that's kind of way off is, Boston has just pitching woes all up and down, starters, relievers. I don't think anyone's going to own. I shouldn't say that. I hear people talking now in the last couple of hours about Baltimore. I don't know how many people will actually pull the trigger on it, but Baltimore is another team where I think their offense is underrated for what their talent level is. They're following the same model as Houston did in rebuilding, which is they weren't afraid to get really, really bad, which they were last year. And I think they were a fun team to watch the second half of last year offensively, not pitching wise. And I think they've got I'll have maybe 5-10% O stacks.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I'm with you on Houston. I'm with you both on Cleveland. I like both those two. I think Houston would be my favorite overall. And then I like the Baltimore call. I think that Baltimore is super sneaky. Now, we talked about we might not be playing Justin Verlander, but if you were playing a Baltimore stack, you can easily fit a guy like Verlander if you wanted to. So it's just one of those stacks where you can kind of get them in and then play whoever else you want in that lineup, So I like that as well. I like that call. Guys, I think we get the final segment of home run calls. And JT, I'm going to start with you. I need your favorite overall home run call of the day. So whoever you think is like a lock to home run in your opinion. And then maybe a guy that is under the radar.
I'm going to say Fran Meal is probably my favorite guy to hit a home run today. I think Danny Duffy can get hit hard. I just, like I said, I just don't have a lot of respect for him, especially on the road in Cleveland. It's a decent enough hitter's park. Off the radar, I would say there's two guys that I think that I'm going to be, having lineups that I think a lot of people may not. One, we just talked about Baltimore a little bit. Santander's a kid that I love. I just like his talent. I think in that park against Eovaldi, who's going to give up some homers no matter what game it is, it seems. I think he's got a shot. And then I like Matt Olson, man. Matt Olson's a guy who he just hits lefties well. He's just such a talented player. Seemed every time I played him last year, he came through. And I'm excited to stay up and watch that game and see them destroy Heaney.
Yeah, I like it. Big T, what say you? Who's your favorite overall guy to hit a home run today? And then who's someone under the radar?
Yeah, JT went and sniped my boy on me. You let him go first, and then he swooped in on me and got Frambo right in front. That's an expert move.
It's his
move,
first
right?
show. You got to give him.
That's what I mean.
Let him go first. Come on.
His first show, and he pulled a veteran move though. Like he went in there and sniped me like that. I liked it.
Needs to impress my colleagues.
I like it, but I'll go to St. Louis for my bomb. I like those Cleveland guys too, those outfielders like I talked about. But give me Goldie. I don't think Goldie is going to be super high owned. I pulled up. I know a lot of people don't like BVP, and everybody makes fun of it, but I pulled up some BVP for these St. Louis guys. Like I said, I hadn't even looked until literally right now about BVP, but we kind of got on them during the show. I started to like them, and now I look at it, and they got good BVP too. That really makes me like him. I mean, Goldie is 6 for 12 with a bomb. I know it's not a huge sample, but if you like him anyways, it makes you feel a little bit better about it when you see they've had good success. So give me Goldie for kind of my good guy bomb. And then I like Mancada too as a low-owned a low-owned bomb that I don't think people are going to have. I love getting really good players low-owned with upside. Like it sounds easy, but a lot of people don't. They try to force in different things. Like I like taking stands with guys like that.
Simple and effective. I like it. My guy is Tatis Jr. I like him as my favorite to go yard. And then, my sneaky play, everyone knows my sneaky play. He's right behind me. Kettle Marte. He goes yard today, puts it back in all the haters, faces. No one's going to play him
too.
Against Paddock.
Does he even have the power to get it out of the yard? Is it going to be an
Here
inside the park?
Yeah, he's got the speed. I'll tell you that. He's fast, but no one's going to play him. Second base is not a strong position as is, and when the positions aren't strong, and I don't have someone who I love as like a great punt, I'm just going to pay up. And if I'm not, Altuve would be in my Houston stacks, but if I'm not going Altuve, maybe Ahara, like JT mentioned, is a solid play. Max Muncy. But other than those guys, I mean, like Kettle Marte is going to come in at very low ownership. And you talk about a guy who can go deep and no one's going to play at a weak position. Yeah, give me the good player, even in a tough matchup. Yeah. But guys, normally we take questions, but we're running real late. So if you want to get questions answered from me, JT, Big T, get over to the Discord chat, join the Discord chat, get over to Run Pure Sports right now. Promo code Join the Movement gives you 20% off for all the sports, every single sport, MLB, MMA, PGA, NBA is coming back next week. That'll include NBA all the way to August 31st. So get over there. Join the Movement is the promo code. Get over to Run Pure Sports. But for me, JSU, JT, Big T,